Hello, this is Kevin Bowersox, creator of the blog Two Thought. In today's tutorial, we will explore the JPA annotations embeddable and embedded. We'll explore how and why to use these annotations. The tutorial will use the code and be based off of the code that was created in the post JPA mapping a many-to-many relationship. If you visit my blog, you can download the source for this code by clicking the GitHub icon below the post, and you can follow along. In today's tutorial, we're going to be running our persistence operations against a MySQL database. This is a change from the past when we have executed against the H2 database, which is an embedded Java database. So here you can see I have open MySQL Workbench, and here is my Two Thought tutorial database, and within that I have a comment table and I also have a post table. We can see the columns in each of these tables. We have an author in the comment table. We don't have an author in the post table. The idea behind JPA's embedded annotation is to be able to take fields within a single row and to be able to create them as an object. So maybe you were dealt a bad database which doesn't create an object in another table. However, in your Java classes and your Java objects, you would like to model a set of fields within a single table as an object. And that's what the embedded annotation allows us to do. So in today's post, we're going to make a set of similar fields within the comment table and a set of similar fields within the post table, and we're going to make them an object in Java and then use the embedded annotation and the embeddable annotation to persist that object into the respective database tables without creating a new table. You'll see this as we move along what the annotation actually does. So let's begin to set up our database. I will close all of the tabs I had open so we can get a fresh start. And the first thing we'll do is we will alter the comment table. And I'm going to add a field email. It'll be a varchar. I'm going to give it 255 characters. And I'm also going to add a created date. And I will save that. And I'm going to create the same set of fields within the post table. So we'll add the author field, and we'll just make it varchar 255. We'll add the email field, make that 255, and then we need the created date column, and we'll add those to the table. So now you can see, once we refresh, that we have the same fields within post and comment. And let's just double check to make sure that they're the same. So we have created date, author, email in comment, and we have created date, author, email within post. I should note that with the initial DDL for this database will be within the GitHub source within the scripts directory, and the tutorial.sql file contains all of the DDL to create this initial database. We won't have to return to the database at this point. So we will just head over to STS let's start by creating a new entity, and I'm going to call this entity stampable, kind of like a date time stamp that we can use. And we'll add some fields. The first one was author. The second one was email. And the final one was our created date. So we'll add getters and setters for these fields. And we'll format our class. And we'll import the date. And now we'll start to annotate. The first annotation will be the embeddable annotation. And now we can annotate these columns. If our field names match our column names, we don't need to add these annotations. I just do it because I like to have them there. It seems verbose to me. Okay. And one thing we're going to do for this class is generate our hash code and equals methods. And we'll use every field. So now we have an embeddable that is the class stampable, and it has three fields: author, email, and created date. So that matches up with the fields we created in those two tables prior in MySQL. Okay, now let's embed these within their respective entities. So the first one was comment, and you can see we already have an author field. I'm going to remove that, and we're going to get some errors because the getters and setters no longer have a field to reference. And it looks like it's also in our equals and hash code, so I'll remove that. We'll regenerate those, and we'll head back up and we will add our field. And I cannot type the word private today. So we'll create a private stampable and just call it stamp. Save that. And actually, I don't like the name stampable. That's actually an interface I've defined in the past. So I'm just going to call this a stamp. So we'll head back to our comment class. And to embed the embeddable into this entity, we use the embedded annotation. So we'll import that. And now we need to create getters and setters for the stamp. And we'll also create the hash code and equals methods. And fine with just using those two fields. So we'll clean up our imports and we'll save that. Now let's head to post. And it doesn't look like we have any duplicate entities within post. So I'm just going to add the embeddable. Hey, I typed it right this time. Okay. And once again, we're going to have new hash code and equals methods. So we'll add the accessors for stamp. And now we will generate the hash code and equals methods. Save that. Okay, so we've successfully put our embeddable into the two entities that it should be embedded. And you can see that we're now using an object Whereas in the database, it's flat. You know, there's only one row with those fields in it, but we're able to force some reusability. So this would be good if you were stuck with a bad database design and you wanted to make your object model more reusable. At this point, we're ready to run some tests. So I'm going to go to our post repository test. And for this test, I'm actually going to run against the MySQL database. And I'm going to not roll back my transactions so we can take a look later. So I lied when we said we wouldn't go back to the MySQL database. And we can see that our test has some errors because we removed the author. And I can get rid of these local variables. So we're going to create a stamp. We'll import it. And now we're going to set these fields. Looks like I should have left that field there. Whoops. And our last one was post date. So I'm just creating some fields and fixing a few syntax errors. Okay. So let's set the fields in our stamp. Whoops. And one last field to set. And now we can add our stamp to the post. I'll isolate that so we can just see where it's at. And at this point, we can now update our assertions. So we're grabbing the post from the database. So I'm just going to use that to get a handle on the stamp. And we'll grab the author's name and make sure that is equal. So we kind of built some of our testing in. I'm not going to test every field, save some time. And let's save that. Now we're running against the MySQL database. I fully expect that we're going to receive some sort of error. We'll work through those because there is value in that. So we'll give it a test run here. And it was referencing the errors that were created in the comment test. Yep, so just like we said, we got some errors. Whoops. So you can see it's complaining about created date. I'm guessing the name for the column I specified does not match what's in the database. Usually I just use DT. Let's check that. Yep. So that should be resolved. Let's run again. Whoops. Okay, and at this point our unit test passed. We should have a record in the database these filled out. Well, let's see what's wrong. So let's see. It obviously rolled back our transaction, and that would do it. It helps when you set the rollback value to false. So let's run our test again. And now we receive another error. And you can see it's saying that we are referencing an unsaved transient instance. I'm most likely in this case not specifying a cascade type. Yep. The cascade element within an annotation, within the one-to-one annotation, specifies how children should be treated when a persistence operation happens on their parent. In this case, we're saying nothing should happen. That's obviously incorrect. So there we do have it set. We don't have it set in our many-to-many. Okay. Let's see if that fixes things. Okay. Let's head back to post. One thing I noticed while we were over here is I have it set to auto. Usually I tell it to let the database use its identity column. And I'm going to check out some of the children of post. Here's an issue. We don't have a hash code or equals method for tag, so it can't tell if it's a new entity or an old one. So let's create those. And we'll just look at the name. That should be enough to tell if two tags are equal. Head back to our tests. And we're still getting an issue there. Let's look at what other children we have. Well, we've handled tag. We redid post hash code and equals method. And I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong method. Post part. There's no hash code equal or equals method here. So let's set those. We'll just use the body. All these errors are occurring because when Hibernate goes to persist, it's thinking these are all new entities. And there must be one left that I didn't get. So post. Let's check out comment. Actually, I'm going to take a look at the database also. Here's an issue. On the junction table between post and tag, I have a primary key assigned. There shouldn't be a primary key on a junction table. So let's try this again. Okay, let's head back to the database and we'll see if we have an embeddable. Yeah, we have a few that are working there. That's good. So what's left is to get the comment repository test working. Once again, we'll switch over to the MySQL database instead of the H2 database, I'm going to specify the transaction configuration, and we'll set the rollback to false this time. And now we're going to have some issues with setting the author field that no longer exists. We'll leave that author field there in the class, local variable. And I'm actually just going to steal the stamp from our other class. And now we'll set the comment stamp, and now we'll get the stamp from the database, and we'll test that it's equal to the value we supplied. So I think we're ready to test. Oops. We still have an error somewhere. Let's save before we run. Okay, our error went away. Now we'll run our test, and we're having more issues. So let's see. Once again, we're receiving the error object references an unsaved transient instance, and this is usually, like I said, due to the cascade type. And let's inspect comment to see if it has any relationships that don't have a cascade type specified. Here we can see the post, so we're just going to set this cascade type. We'll set it to all. We'll save that change. We'll head back to our test. Okay, now let's head to the database. And we can see that our embeddable was saved. And that pretty much wraps up the coding piece of this tutorial. We did encounter a decent amount of exceptions, and that's the difference between running against an embedded Java database such as H2 as opposed to something that would be more useful for like a production environment such as MySQL. You can see we ran into a lot more issues when it actually tried to commit the transactions to the database, and that's to be expected. We work through those, and there's value in learning from them. And first, there's two places to look when you have those sort of issues. You can look at your JPA mappings, and you also should look at the database. I've definitely ran into issues with the database when performing this type of work before, especially when using the auto-generate DDL feature in Hibernate. It has actually created triggers before that I didn't know were there. So just areas to inspect for them. Remember the transient problem that we encountered. You can solve that by adding a cascade type. And then, in this post we also got to see how an embeddable works. You can see that we use the embedded annotation to put an embeddable within an entity, and then within the actual embeddable itself we define it very similar to a regular entity. We're not specifying an ID in this one. Embeddables can be used as IDs. Maybe we can cover that in a later post. So this is all trying to create a flat single record in a database into an object in your object model. So I hope you enjoyed this post. I hope you learned something from it. And until we meet again, this is Kevin Bowersox from Blog 2 Thought.